Hello, 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 hello. Welcome back to Beyond the Sermon. We're coming to you live from Smithfield, Virginia, the ham capital of the world. Tonight, we have our guest for the evening.
How are you doing today?
This is Ken Hurlinger.
Fantastic.
Yes, we so much appreciate you coming out here and taking that, especially on a Mother's Day.
Yeah, glad
That's
to
right.
be here.
Yeah, and Sharon especially for letting you loose.
Yeah.
So appreciate that very much. Very much. All right, so we are glad to have you with us. And as always, if you want to call us and have something great you'd like to say or that you'd like to talk to us about, we have 757-357-2536. That's 757-357-2536. And love to hear your thoughts. We had some great write-in comments last week. It was a lot of fun. We had some great stuff. In fact, even some of the comments that we got in gave us some conversation for later in the week. I was having a conversation with a couple of guys in the office about some comments that were written in. So that was pretty cool. So
Right.
Ken was willing to step up to the batter's plate today and take one for us. And so we're going to see how far we can hit it tonight. So there we are. So I will say, Ken, you've been in Smithfield Baptist how long now?
We came in about 2010.
Okay.
I believe was the year.
About 13, 14 years now.
14
Okay, all right. So we a lot of us know Ken, and he's been involved in a lot of leadership. So we appreciate all that he's done. But we have been told that Tim is keeping the icebreaker opening under wraps, and so we're going to let you know this is all on him. We do not ascribe to or take any credit or responsibility for what is about to happen here. But he has some good Mother's Day memes for us. I have not previewed these. He wanted to catch us as our true reaction. So you're going to be seeing for the first time as we are. So you got those all fired up there, Mr.
I do.
Timbert?
I do.
All right.
So here we go.
All right.
There's gonna be
Happy Mother's Day, by the way.
Yes, and there's only going to be like a few of them, not a whole bunch. So, all right, here we go.
So it's kicking it off to all those mothers out there. We appreciate you being with us tonight and spending time with us. If you catch us later in the week, glad you could jump in there with us and see these as well. So what you got for us,
All right,
Tim?
here we go. First one.
All right, I don't have a 9-to-5 job. I have a when I open my eyes to when I close my eyes job.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah,
And
it's
this
the
is
truth.
for our mothers.
Yeah, and I love the kid like trying to like burn her face off on the oven there.
And this is, I mean, and I say this with like, it's so much what our mothers do. I mean, it is not a 9-to-5 job. I mean,
It's absolutely
it is
true.
from the time, especially the ones that stay at home, and I also come in the ones that work and still come home and have to
Absolutely.
take care of the kids. This right here, I saw this. I was like, yeah, I got to throw this one in. So
Is that? I'm assuming that's water she's pouring, not milk.
looks that's true.
Pretty
Yeah.
weak milk there.
Well, the next picture on this one would have been she puts down the left leg and then uses the right leg to open up the door to let the dog out.
There you go. There you go. All right, what you got, Tim?
All right.
Mother's Day number 2. How do I put this? You will never sleep in again. Amen to that.
That's true.
You know, Jen tells this story when we brought Caden, our firstborn, home from the hospital 13 years ago. He slept. They always sleep like great little babies in the hospital, right?
Yeah.
And then you bring them home, and I'm convinced that night they wake up. And so he had slept great. He was a champ. We got home. I had to go to work the next day, okay? And he was up until 5 o'clock in the morning, and I had to get up at 6 to get to work. And I remember Jen saying, she actually said, I don't know if I can do this. Like
a
it's
little late.
Too little late now, babe.
What I think messes me up, and this has happened numerous times with 3 kids, is you're sleeping and you thinking you're making it through the night, and then like, bam, he or she wakes up and you get them all done, and then by the time you get them down, it's like 10 minutes before your alarm clock's about to go off and all. So.
Yep. There's this great Michael McIntyre skit. He's a British comedian. He talks a lot about his families. And he says that, people who don't have kids, they go to sleep and they look at each other and say, good night.
Yeah.
Good night, darling. I love you. You sleep well. They say, oh, yes, we will. We'll sleep well. And then he says, you know what my wife and I say? We look at each other and go, good luck.
Yeah.
All right.
I can definitely relate to this one as well. So Anne was born I was running the Y2K Fusion Center for the Air Force, and so she was born on the 7th of January, and I got the call from Sharon that it was time to take her to the hospital. You know what I mean?
Time to roll.
time to roll. And I literally was telling my captains, not until I get done, transitioning all of the responsibilities of one of my female captains was like, "Sir, you've just got to go. You've got to go now." And I'm like, "No, we will do the transition and then I will go." So anyway, fast forward and Ann wasn't sleeping, and we were doing some long days, and Ann wasn't sleeping, and my head was just busting. And so I tell my boss, who was a colonel, and his wife was a nurse, and she said, "She's not getting enough milk. You need to supplement." We
That's
supplemented. Boom.
Bam.
Slept.
Boom. Yep.
It was
Life was
heaven.
better. Life was better.
Instantaneously.
Yep.
So
Yep.
for all those new mothers out there, sometimes,
Sure, they're getting enough food, right?
exactly.
That's
Food
it.
matters.
I think a lot of parents are going to be able to relate to this one.
All right,
here
number
we go.
3.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's pretty much my youngest.
Okay.
All
Pretty
of
much
them.
my youngest right
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
You can't get a picture from him.
Yeah, no, well, he knows it's picture time, so he starts to look like that. That's exactly right. Yeah, in fact, we were taking pictures today with my parents because my parents came down from Richmond and Jen's mom was up from Orlando. And so we're trying to take some pictures out around the cross in front of the church building, and he was giving me one of these.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's funny.
Yeah, I was a shy kid. I mean, Tim doesn't believe that I was actually
Yeah,
a
it's
type
hard
B
to
growing up.
believe.
That
He told me that. And
yeah,
I'm like,
but my mom would come to
okay.
take pictures, like of me.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was a bookworm. I read books. Every book I could get my hand on, I tried to read. And every time she tried to take a picture, I was able to get that book in front of my face.
Jeez.
nice, nice.
All right, let's see.
All right, what else you got?
This is so true. That is so true.
Yes, it is.
So when I try to hold Judah's hand, it's like, where are we going, buddy? It's like my arm being contorted in different ways. It's like,
Yeah, and Judah is Tim's youngest, so he's itty bitty. That's funny. All right, what else you got? Yep, that's right. That's right. Now, meanwhile, you've just spent the last hour trying to get their attention to do something they don't want to do.
That's true.
But the minute you pop that crinkle sound, like it's just all around. Like, yeah, here you go. Like, so, so you do something like this, right? And here they come, like from all the foggy recesses of the house. It's like, when did this happen?
it's like mine.
Well, yeah, I've discovered they do the same thing for cash as well.
Yeah.
You notice that over the years?
When it's time to do the chore, they run. But when you say
Right.
it's time for the allowance
Oh,
payout,
yes.
they're all there. Yeah, yeah.
All right, let's see what else. That's true. I can speak to this one.
Yeah.
It's like just straight as can be. It's like
Oh,
just
yeah.
bend your knee, but they got to bend it up to their chest almost
True
to get
enough.
that in there.
True enough. Good thing they're kind of flexible because I know that I've kind of pushed to the limit
It's
a little
like-
bit
it's
on
like-
that.
that's
And I was like,
true.
come on, I can get this thing in there. Come on.
All right.
Perfect.
Yes. Yeah, that's pretty much it. That's got to be Photoshop. There's no rodent that big.
I don't know. It
Gotta
might
be. There's no rodent that
All right,
big.
this is
All right,
funny.
last one. Just the kid just cracked the Mother's Day secret. Mom, I just wanted to tell you that Mother's Day wouldn't be possible without me. I'll be waiting for my present in the living room. Love, Joshua. I wonder how that went for Joshua.
I don't know, but I saw that. I was like, that's funny.
I don't think that's probably going to go too well.
No. So,
Well, happy Mother's Day.
Yes,
On
happy
those
Mother's
notes, I don't know if you've ever gotten that kind of note before, but happy Mother's Day, and we do appreciate all that you do. We do appreciate and we make a big deal here at church about all of those who may not even like be biologically mothers, because there's a lot of things that play into life and circumstances, and we just that anybody who's called to be a mentoring role, someone who's maternal and someone who's guiding and leading and teaching and supporting and sacrificing for. I mean, we have a lot of ladies in our church who give like to my kids as teachers and Sunday school teachers, and I can think of several. You
right.
can too. We got Ken helps us with the middle school youth, and there's several ladies in there who really give themselves on Awana nights and Sunday mornings, and just really take it up a notch in helping provide guidance for the next generation. So, we just appreciate all of you, and I'm thinking even of some more ladies in our church who just work so hard behind the scenes to make stuff happen. Yeah, that's absolutely right. Yeah. give a big shout out for all that they do. And we're really blessed here at our particular church to have a lot of women who really just give a lot. So I want to thank you all for that. And if you're on with us tonight, just thank you for all you do. And if you aren't Smithfield Baptist Church connected, we just certainly want to give a shout out to you for all that God has put in your path for what you're doing and how you're helping build the kingdom as well. All right, so we had to start a little bit late tonight because I got into a football game that went a little long, and we knew Mother's Day was going to put us back a little bit as we spent time with our families, and so we had kind of prepped for this, but we're glad that you're with us. And we are starting a little bit later tonight. We'll probably try to wrap up about the same time, though, because when everybody's trying to get ready for work and stuff. So we'll be shooting here for about an hour from now, give or take a little bit. But again, we got Ken with us, and we had some great questions this morning in what we call Beyond the Sermon. In my 8:30 service here at the church, I'd like to open it up for some questions. And we had some really good ones this morning. I had a good question about the idea of, life and death and the eternal life and how those really connect and what's good theology about that. I had some great questions that came in. So it's a lot of fun. And our original vision for this was to kind of take some of the outstanding questions from the sermon and say, well, how can we build on that? So Ken, I can fire away. Did you have anything in particular?
Yeah, can I address the one that you brought up about the Garden of Eden? But I want to take it back to day one of creation, if we can.
Okay.
See what your thoughts.
Way on back. All right.
Oh yeah, I mean let's start with the Garden of Eden.
Okay.
How big do you think the Garden of Eden was? Was it a small place, or could it have potentially, before the fall of man, encompassed essentially the entire world?
I have no idea. Yeah, we don't get any kind of we get the one description that it was found essentially between the four rivers.
Right.
So if, the only one that we know of with an actual name today is, I believe it's the Tigris, or is it the Euphrates? I'm not sure off the top of my head, but one of those right there in Babylon, we all learned about in school. Forgive me, because off the top of my head, I can't really remember, but one of them is actually mentioned. Maybe you can dig into AI on that for us, Tim. But one of them is mentioned, and that's the only one that we have an actual geographical location to press to. But with that kind of pretty expansive area, a description, you'd have to assume it's a decent size. What do you find it, Tim?
I don't know either.
AI, I don't know. Come on, it's not that hard, guys. All right, come on online, help me out here. All right, I confessed today in church, I'm getting closer to 48th and 47, and the brain ain't what it used to be. I'm just telling you.
Because you would have to presume potentially that the entire world. Right, the entire world was perfect at that time, right? So the Garden of Eden was a place,
right?
But certainly, all of the things that man was created to go do could literally have been over the entire world, right?
It could have been. I mean, it really could. So I pulled up on Google.
And the continents were all together at that time, we think. So
well, you know what? And I'm not blowing you off, brother. I was just trying to nail this down. So it tells about in Genesis chapter 2 about it being in between four rivers, right? And so I'm wrong. They think that it's the Pishon, the Gihon, and then they have two here. And at least Wikipedia, because we all know Wikipedia is absolutely true all the time, which is not true, by the way. But anyway, that they're calling the Tigris and the Euphrates both being here. So all right. So anyway, we got several rivers going on here. It could have. I mean, God said, "Tend the garden."
Right.
So it could have been the entire expanse. It could have been a huge area. Yeah. I mean, there's nothing to say it had to be. It couldn't have been small. But I think when it starts using rivers to tell you that's kind of where it was, I always envisioned a pretty good sized place.
Right.
So did I. I always think it's big. It's like, I don't know, just open fields. I don't know, lush forests. No. That's what comes to mind when I think of it. Yeah,
and beauty. One thing I can't. I'm not putting a plug in for this show, okay? Here for this show I'm about to tell you. But on Netflix the other day, I caught this show, and I've talked about it a couple times in Bible study. It's called Ancient Archaeology. Mm-hmm. That's the title of the show. It's on Netflix. And I watched the whole thing, and I was really fascinated by it. Now, the guy in there has been kind of dismissed by all kinds of ancient archaeologists. His argument is that, they've totally dismissed me, but it's because they don't want to hear what my thoughts are.
Right.
And so he's very open about the fact that... Tim is getting hot, so he decided he'd unzip his jacket.
And I didn't know that was going to be picked up like that.
Good mics, very good mics.
Sorry.
This is what we call unfiltered.
Yes. Sorry about that.
It is live and unfiltered for sure.
All right. So going back to what I was saying. Mallory, you got to get control over this guy. All right. All right. So in this show, he's making the argument that what we've all been taught in school, that we were hunters and gatherers and that we all gathered about 4,000 BC, give or take. Maybe I'm off in my time frame, but you know what I'm saying. All in Samaria, Babylon kind of area, and that we all started there, and that's kind of where everything expanded from there. Well, his argument is, and you know, some of this depends on how old you think the Earth is, and we don't need to get into all that conversation tonight necessarily. But you know, his argument is that as we come out of the Ice Age, depending on how you want to date that, his ideas are that we have some incredible building sites from way before humans were supposed to be hanging out in Samaria, and we have some incredible like art in the stone and some of these incredible buildings and things like that. So his argument is that we had a fair amount of technological advancement beyond what we've given our ancient ancestors credit for to accomplish some really incredible things. And that even with the flood and this incredible, because he acknowledges that there were some natural disasters and that clearly there was a time in history here where humanity nearly got wiped out.
Right.
Now he acknowledges that. And he has some really interesting comments about things that line up really interestingly with Genesis. So all that to say, that wasn't really your question, but as we go down kind of the winding trail here, if you're interested in some of this stuff, is the video was ancient archaeology, and you know, he may be a quack for all I know. I never heard of the guy before in my life, but it was interesting if nothing else. And like I said, it had some interesting things that kind of lined up. You know, the Tower of Babel, where you know we got one civilization apparently that's all together and everybody's speaking the same language. This is early on in Genesis for those of you who aren't familiar with this story, but basically all these people come together. And they all speak the same language, and they're building these incredible towers, and we have some of those kinds of buildings all over the ancient world. And so, you know, then they say, theologically, Genesis tells us, God says, you know what? You're not all that. You're not all a bag of chips, and your pride is going to get in the way, and I'm going to stop this right now because there's no way you can replace me because I'm God and you're not. And so he confuses the languages, as Genesis tells us, and then people really start to disperse. So, you know, what we can tell is that Garden of Eden, it must have been big enough to need tending. Okay, that's a given. It had to have been big enough to handle Adam and Eve's children because we were told to have children in the garden. And then it obviously, even after the fall, we know there are other human beings running around because we know that they're marrying and they're doing some of this stuff. And I'm not schooled enough to like get into all the deep conversation and all this. This hasn't been. No,
that's.
Oh, that's you. Okay. So you know, I mean, there's plenty I could learn about this particular topic for sure. But clearly, there's a huge group of humanity running around that the Bible simply doesn't speak to.
Yeah, and it's intriguing to me because before the fall, we don't really know what our human body might have been capable of, right? I mean, right now we only use 10% of our brain, but we were given 100% of our brain.
100%, that's right.
So how do we know that the Garden of Eden could not have been potentially a portal, if you will, to the entire earth, if you will?
Yeah.
Right? Because we have a massive brain and we're using just a part of it. Was that also all of those other capabilities potentially, could they have been taken away? Don't know. Maybe God will someday, you know, decide to share when we get to heaven. But frankly, I'm not sure that even matters at that point. But
at that point,
but it's really kind of an interesting discussion because, you know, in our middle school class last week, you know, I was asked, you know about, is the Earth really 4,000 years or could it be 450 trillion years? It doesn't matter to me. It doesn't shake my faith either way, right? Because, you know, we know that man lived longer right after the fall. We have people that are recorded to live, you know, 10 times longer than we're doing now.
Right.
So how do we know that before the fall they didn't live even longer? It doesn't shake my faith just to have a debate about, you know, what someone might say. What did the garden look like? I mean, should we be offended by having that discussion? Absolutely not.
Yeah, and you know, Christians take a lot of variety on that whole question, and it really came as kind of, if we aren't careful, it comes in like a knee-jerk reaction to Darwin and evolutionism. You know, that started coming out in the 50s, 1850s now, not 1950s, and so you know, Protestant evangelical Christians kind of pushed back, and that's where we really start getting some of the conversations about it being 6 literal days and the Earth being 6,000 something years old, and those kinds of arguments. But the church has not been settled on some of those conversations throughout its church history from the very beginning.
Right.
You know, so I think
Nor does it shake a faith, right?
right. It's because at the end of the day, I think the most important thing for me is that at the very beginning, God spoke and the world was created. Boom.
Yeah.
And that's really the essential piece of that, because we can talk in Christian theology and Christian ethics and defending the faith. Apologetics is what we call that. You can defend all kinds of things, but we have what we call essential doctrines and non-essential. And how old the earth is, to me, is just kind of a classic non-essential. Right. It just is. Now, if you have a strong opinion, I have no interest in offending you or like setting you off or whatever. I mean, it doesn't really matter to me because it's a non-essential. The essential is that God providentially and in His sovereignty created the world in order to bring about a childhood, family, and led Jesus Christ to come and save us. I mean, those are the essentials. So these are the areas where we can have a variety of opinions. But
so you had one more question that was brought up that you couldn't get to last.
So let me circle around here real quick. So how did this Garden of Eden help me? I'm going with it.
Okay.
So where did the Garden of Eden come from? So your question was you sent this in, right?
I did.
Why did early Christians or even today's Christians have to sacrifice anything, and why can't we go on with life as it were, as if it is our own Garden of Eden? And so isn't this my being right here with you? Is it potentially my Garden of Eden as God, created it for me? But you made a comment, and it was on your first slide, I think, when I sent that in about the sacrifices that early Christians had to make. But couldn't have God just said, "There's no need to make a sacrifice because I'm here"? And then now we're living in that Garden of Eden, right? So this is I think some people construct, if you will, that, hey, I'm okay, and you handled it in your question and your response today, right? That well, look, I'm a Christian, so I have all these things that are still in here from a sin perspective I got to go deal with, but because I'm a Christian, this is my Garden of Eden, and I'm living in happiness, and so why do I have to do anything more than just live in my own little dream world, if you will? Yeah, well, and God didn't really call us to be outside of the world, and we talked about that a little bit this morning. I mean, we are called to get down into the mess and the muck. And we can point to Jesus in that too, right? I mean, here's Jesus in truly the Garden of Eden. If there ever was a Garden of Eden, Jesus hanging out there in the Trinity, and he decided to I call it the muck, the muck of our world, and he decided to leave all that glory to come into this to show us that it does matter.
Hey, I don't want to interrupt you guys, but
I
got Carol Leiter just sent something that was. I'll let you read this.
All right, great.
It's going to come up.
Thank you, Miss Carol. What you got? Happy Mother's Day, Miss Carol. All right. I saw a sticker on a vehicle recently that has really troubled me. It said something like religion, an excuse not to think. I think, where'd it go? I think it's okay to what?
It says, I think it's okay to ask questions. How else are we to grow?
Yeah, I mean, I think the bumper sticker is trying to say that religion, the old idea of it being the opiate of the masses, meaning like religion is a safety valve for us to not actually have to put our thinking caps on and think about the hard things of the world.
Right.
And that kind of goes to Ken's question here just a minute ago about why can't we just live in our own little happiness and be like the Amish basically, right, all over the place, right? We're just going to live in our own little commune or whatever. But I think that religion isn't an excuse. I think that is in itself a dismissal of what religion says. And Christianity itself doesn't for 1 minute say, hey, just remove yourself from the world, hide from the world, don't ever think about anything real, don't be a scientist, don't be involved in the military, don't be involved in the world, just pull yourself and don't ever think. Well, that's the accusation, but it's absolutely fundamentally not true. In fact, some of the greatest minds in all of history have been deeply religious people. From philosophers to scientists. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are
C.S.
lots
Lewis.
Right. C.S. Lewis actually was a brilliant English Oxford Don who became a Christian actually later in life.
I have spoken with atheists that thought highly of C.S. Lewis.
Absolutely. Because he has such an incredible way of speaking really powerful truths in really understandable ways. So I think, my knee-jerk, I agree with you, Miss Carol. I think that's disturbing because it's very dismissive and somehow implies that we're hiding behind our religion. In reality, I think trying to be religious in this world and having a faith pushes us to think even harder if we're doing it right, because we can't put our brain on autopilot. It's just not the way it works.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was a good question, Carol. Thank you.
What were you
Pastor,
saying?
if I can jump on
Yeah,
that.
please.
So, back when I was at VMI, we went to go see. I think it was the first Terminator came out, and we probably argued until 2 a.m. with one of my roommates. All sitting around after we saw this movie, Lights Out. Because TAPS is at 23:30, and we're debating about time travel. And one of my roommates is a physicist, right? So I'm like, well, if you could have traveled back, then how could you, be you in your future if your guy's coming? And so anyway, it was a whole long dialogue just about that. But if we can debate about time travel in a movie,
Sure.
why shouldn't I be able to open up the Word of God and then try and have an intellectual debate with people that are smarter than me about it? Because then I grow tenfold by learning from them.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely,
probably
no question.
faster than me going, looking through 100 different resources, trying to get the same knowledge that I can come to you and ask a question. You're a learned man in this topic, and you're going to provide me an answer, that I would still probably want to fact check in some cases sometimes, because that makes us
Sometimes I
even grow
just
more.
make it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that. But okay.
Fake it
is
till
out.
you make it.
Kent, so before the show, it kind of goes into what you said before the show, that having this type of dialogue is, in your mind, I think you said was very healthy for Christians to be able to examine the other standpoint, but in a way that it wasn't going to destroy or take away our faith or anything like that.
Yeah.
And I think, going back to the bumper sticker, Miss Carol's bumper sticker, I think a lot of people who are not religious assume that people who are religious are using it as a crux or a crutch to not have to think. That somehow they're like, oh, okay, my religion answers that, I'm going to put my brain over here. In reality, that's not the Christian call at all. And that is, again, not what history has shown with some of these great Christian thinkers and great geniuses who were religious. So, I think if you're outside religion or outside the faith, you think that, oh, well, they just grab onto that to try to not have to deal with things. In reality, your faith makes you ask all kinds of questions if you're doing it right, in my opinion. What do you guys think?
Yeah, and it probably drives you harder, I think, to want to do things, right? So it makes you grow. So, I have a bumper sticker, if you will, on the bottom of all my emails that says, keep up the fire. That comes from one of my roommates who was going over to be stationed on the Korean DMZ, and his battalion, they use that as their slogan. And he said that slogan epitomizes your life. So this is, back in the 86, 87 time frame. And you should, adopt it. And so I did, and I've used it on every email I think that I can ever imagine sending, both in both my military and industry, and also my personal email, to say that, right? And so my faith is fueling that fire, right? So I have all this passion that I want to do, not only because of how I treat work, but also when I coach swimming, or now when I'm working with kids in the church, and my faith is bolstering that, right? So that struggling of knowledge, if you will, and the more I learn about it, and believe me, I am not knowledgeable. I kind of weight myself, and all that, just to be honest. But it does. It fuels me, right? Because when I see what God created for us and how Jesus led us, and then all of what these disciples do, what we're doing here in the church, I feel like I'm still trying to climb the ladder of being as good as those dudes were back in the early days, and so my knowledge is growing because of that. So I would hate to think that we just sit there and say, well, I don't have to learn because
Checked
I'm a
out,
Christian.
right?
I just check out and sit in the pew and let the pastor talk, and I can go home.
Yeah, and you can do that if you want to, but that's not what God calls us to do.
Yeah.
So.
Do you want to go to the next question, or do you want to roll on to the next?
Sure.
segment?
If anybody's want to build on that a little bit more, and Ken, come full circle here. Did we we addressed your original question, right, brother?
Yeah, there's probably some nuances in there that you and I could probably talk, and we probably want to team up for a follow on, because
Sure.
Because it would be interesting to know too that during the second coming, I think what will the future look like? We know what the mansion in the sky, if you will be.
Sooner the better too, right?
Yeah, exactly. So isn't the Garden of Eden going to return in those days, because it's the Lion and the Lamb laying together, right?
Well, in Revelation, which is the last book of the Bible, makes it really clear that God will create a new heaven and a new earth. So the new earth, we believe, with the best that we can,
Right.
that we're kind of looking at a new Garden of Eden, as the world was supposed to be at that time. And speaking of C.S. Lewis, he has a great like literary discussion and images of this in his The Last Battle, the last book of the Chronicles of Narnia. He actually has the Jesus figure in that book create the new world, and it's beautiful in its literary capacities. So yeah, there's something to look forward to.
Yeah,
Absolutely. So be thinking and growing and learning,
Absolutely.
and then eventually God will tell you all the things we got wrong. All right. So the question was, now you gonna fess up to where you got this?
Yeah, so I did. I had AI create this question.
You know, say that again because I don't think we heard you. Say it again.
yeah. Look at he's like
Oh
trying to,
yeah, I didn't hear it come through very well. Did you?
So I had AI create this question, and I just picked the most complex one I could find.
Right. So I'm sitting there up on the platform this morning.
It's a classic.
And Tim says, "Oh yeah, there's one more." Now I'm trying to wrap up, okay? Because I'm watching the clock in the back, and I'm trying to wrap up. And Tim from the very far back says, "Oh wait, there's one more. You got time for it?" I'm like, all right, well, let me look at it. So I'm flipping through. I'm like, no, I don't have time for this. Totally set me up, dude. So here he uses AI. Now we've been talking for weeks on this thing about AI and how brilliant it is, right? And scary kind of brilliant, right? In fact, I just read this week, one of the main creators, or at least scientists thinking about this, says that AI will be smarter than human beings in 5 to 20 years.
I could see that. Yes.
Yeah, that's terrifying. Okay, so Tim and I are a little disagreed. I think it's terrifying.
yeah,
He
hopefully I
thinks
get
it's
that
cool.
10% of the brain be getting a
Right,
little bit
right.
bigger. So you know,
I
can
did
use
read
it.
one time that they said that Einstein, they figure, used 14%.
Yeah.
But the difference between 10, like you and I, and 14, it's only 4%, but that's the difference between Einstein and you and
Yeah.
me. So just so you know.
I might be using 6.
All right, right. And it's 8:53, so it's kind of past your bedtime, isn't it? No, you don't sleep anyway. All right, so there's the question that Tim set me up with from AI this morning. And this is coming out of Hebrews. We're in chapter 13, 9 through 16. And he says, this is the AI now. How does, it'd help if I say it with like some kind of fancy accent. So how does the metaphor of the heart being strengthened by grace rather than by foods relate to the focus of our faith? That's part A.
Yeah.
And part B
I mean,
is-
I'm done already.
Yeah, right.
Go back to the learning question. It was easier.
6%. And what does this say, B, what does this say about the importance of inner spiritual strength versus outer rituals?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question.
Oh, yeah? Do you?
But I'm gonna need you to answer.
yeah. Can you explain the last part for me so I can put it in layman terms?
Can
Yeah.
you
So I
answer
under-
that?
And this is the question you want to answer me to answer like 30 seconds or less from the platform.
And you couldn't do it.
Oh, yeah. You're right. I sure couldn't do it. I couldn't do it now.
I couldn't even ask AI that question in 30 seconds.
All right, so let's parse it. Let's break it into parts. So how does the metaphor of the heart being strengthened by grace rather than by foods? Okay, so it's referring in Hebrews to the fact that we need to be strengthened by the grace of Jesus Christ instead of the food rituals that came through the Jewish faith and customs, where it's pointing ahead to Jesus Christ, that we would sacrifice, that the blood of the animals would cover the sins of the people, and that they would then take the body of the animal and they would take it outside the city or the camp and they would dispose of it there because it had symbolically and ritually, it had all of the sins of the people on it. So they would dispose of it after the blood had been sprinkled. And so instead of the food piece of it, instead of those ritual pieces of it, it is saying that we need to be strengthened by the grace which comes through Jesus Christ, because as we call the Old Testament, that is pointing and foreshadowing to Jesus, and Jesus is the fulfillment of all of those food dietary laws and all of those laws that show the Israelites how to be God's people. So now we have Jesus to show us how to be God's people, and so the metaphor of the heart being strengthened, we're strengthened by the grace we have in Jesus Christ, not these outside external rituals that we used to have. That's part A. Look at the camera. Okay.
No, you
Hi.
can't look at this.
So,
Mine's better.
yeah. It's the
So this is hold on. I
matters,
gotta
man.
make a point here. I know
Yeah,
when
man.
you're getting serious because you get the hand
The
movement.
hand kind of starts coming out, right?
If he hits me in the backhand, though, I might be done with.
All right. So then that's A. We're going to keep digging in this for just a minute, and then we're going to move on, okay? So how is that going to be the focus of our faith? Because Jesus Christ becomes the focus of our faith as opposed to the external rituals that we have to do.
Am I
Right?
still allowed to eat though?
Yeah, dude.
Okay.
See, Tim brought in McDonald's cookies. Now we're talking. The way to the heart of a Baptist pastor is through his
Absolutely.
stomach. All right, so then let's do part B. We'll wrap this up. What does this say, this focus on our faith, say about the importance of inner spiritual strength versus outer rituals? Because, again, to recap, It is all about a relationship with Jesus Christ. You can go to church, you can attend, you can have great attendance, you can bring your kids, you can say prayers, you can try to be a good person, whatever that actually ultimately means. You can try to do all of those things, but all of those outside ritual things, if they aren't a reflection of your true heart internally, then you're essentially kind of wasting your time. It's not that it's unimportant, it's just not the most important. And so if you're just running around trying to check religious boxes, then you are missing the whole point of what Christianity is supposed to be. Because as I say often from the platform, Christianity is about a relationship. It's not a religion of laws and rules to follow. And going back to Miss Carol's bumper sticker, if you want a religion, you're actually better off choosing something other than Christianity, because Christianity, as we've already hit on with the whole Garden of Eden and everything, Christianity is oftentimes intentionally vague, because I think God wants it to be vague so that we can live into the life he's called us to. If you want something really clear and like a religion of like, all right, well, you're much better off with some of the other world religion options. You really are. If that's what you're looking for, if you're looking to prove how good you are for your faith, then Christianity may not be the place for you, quite honestly. Because Christianity is all about a relationship with a higher power and with God and becoming a child of God, not trying to follow a set of rules. Right. So I'm talking a lot. What do you want to jump in here?
Yeah, so I'm going to tag on to that knowledge and something that happened a couple weeks ago when I was with my brother, that's my roommates, actually, and we went on a bike ride.
Let me interrupt you. Ken went to VMI, so when he's talking about rats, that's not a reflection of his home or anything like that. He's talking about his fellow students.
My classmates.
Okay.
And so so we went to church together, and then afterwards, it was really kind of fun because we got into this theological discussion of which, again, my knowledge, 6% brain. But one of my classmates and a roommate said, do you think Jesus sinned? And I said, well, I mean, clearly we know from the Bible that, Jesus took on all of our sins.
Right.
And some people could translate, became sin, but that doesn't mean he was sinful. And he goes, but there was somewhere I read that, I think it was lost book of the Bible or something about Jesus killing somebody. Okay. And I said, no, I think that was in a Netflix movie or something. But so anyway, as we were discussing this, I said, so this is what I liken it to, right? So when Jesus came to earth, he felt all of our pain.
Sure.
So if he was to put his hand into the rose bush, he could literally have told the thorns of the rose bush not to scratch me. I mean, he had a tree die, right?
That's right, absolutely.
Right, so he could have said, you're not going to scratch me, put my hand in, you see nothing.
Still the storm, did all kinds of
things.
Right,
so he could have not done that, but he didn't, clearly. If he would have been gardening and he would have put his arm into a thorn bush, he would have been scratched and hurt, just like you and I would have been scratched and hurt. Even though as God, he could have chosen not to do that, right?
Right.
And then, I followed on with it, and then I wanted to just add on to this that if he was person of sin, then clearly he couldn't have been our Savior. We would have been at a church this morning where they were literally doing a sacrifice.
Right. And there'd be no point.
And there would be no point in why we went there, right? Because we would literally still be, going to the temple and watching, the spotless lamb being slaughtered for us.
We'd have to. Because that's the only way we'd have for God to say your sins are forgiven.
Right. So tying back to the original question we got in, so why do we want to continue to learn? Because, there's outside influences, and they look good. I mean, you can go watch some really great movies, but theologically, they might be just kind of filling that gap from when we don't know, from Jesus as a kid to Jesus as an adult, and someone's like, well, let me just, describe the whole life of him.
Sure.
Right? Sure. And they're putting something in there, but there's no basal fact of that. They're just like suppositioning things.
Yeah, and in the history of the church, we do have quote-unquote Gospels of St. Peter and other presentations that are written much later than the apostles and much later, and it's clear from the way they're written in our time frames for them that they're after the fact by quite a time frame. But that's sometimes what you'll hear, like these lost gospels or these lost books of the Bible, where there were people who were trying to sit around and say, well, if I were going to talk about Jesus as a 5-year-old, what would that look like? And so they write an interesting story. But that's different from, as we all know, and we agree in here, that's different than the Gospels, where they are written by the eyewitness accounts of the disciples or apostles who were with Jesus.
Yeah. Hey, so Pastor, you think if he was in my middle school class, he'd be on your flag football team?
I would only hope so.
All right, hey, real quick before we wrap this up, I just want to throw this out. I'm gonna post and I gotta
He
get
never
it.
misses a tackle. Every pass is completed.
Hey,
It'd be
guys.
awesome.
I've got to plug this. So we got Mr.
You're losing us, Tim.
I am. I got a Mr. Stephen Click, which
Yep,
I
yep,
have
yep.
to give.
Hey, Steve, what's
I
up,
have to
brother?
give Steve. He is.
Yep.
He was one of our biggest, most watched out of towners. He watches
Steve,
there
Steve's
every
the man.
Sunday.
Steve and I were together in Indianapolis for 3 years.
Okay.
And
hi,
Steve's an awesome guy, and he moved down to Texas, and
he
so he got
just
tired
asked
of snow. All right, what you got, brother?
It's kind of funny.
Why do we as Southern Baptists profess baptism by immersion but not come to church in the rain?
If you come here, I'll have an umbrella for you.
That's right. That's right. We'll meet you with an umbrella, brother. It's always strikes me. Any weather will do, right? Any weather will do. And here in Virginia now, this is not what Steve and I experienced in Indianapolis, because there were times when we had church open in Indianapolis. I'm like, I don't know why anybody's here. This is crazy. But here in Virginia, snow is kind of it shuts down everything. I mean, we shut down things here because it might snow.
Yeah, exactly.
Not because it actually has snowed. And I can get up on a Sunday morning, kind of look outside and have a sense of I wonder who's going to be watching online today, as opposed to here in the church.
Yeah.
So you're right, brother. We dunk them. We do it one time and we get them fully wet. But buddy, that rain, they will not come back out if it looks bad out there. I agree with you, brother. And it doesn't rain in Texas, so you don't have to worry about it, right?
Yeah, by the way, as a swimmer, I don't run in the rain. I mean, I figure I'm used to
you've been
being
there,
wet,
right?
so
Yeah.
clothes will dry. So, yeah. So,
I will confess, I hate to be rained on.
do you?
In fact, my wife and my kids were having this conversation yesterday, I think. And I was like, I don't know what it is, but I hate to get rained on. I hate to be wet like that in my clothes and have to continue to work or continue to whatever and be wet. It's just like a thing with me. I hate to get rained on.
Maybe this is part of the world weighing down on us. Maybe we're so used to getting snow days in school that people, when they think they get a couple snow days, from church.
Yeah,
Well,
maybe.
here's the thing that I think is funny.
We've
They
trained
used to
them for
have snow
failure,
days.
right?
We're one of the few places, probably further down south they will too, but we got built. I don't know if they're built in, but we get hurricane days.
Yeah.
We get
yeah,
more
yeah.
hurricane
That's
days
true.
than
Yeah.
we do
That's true.
snow days.
Yeah, and we're in Smithfield, so we're about an hour from Virginia Beach. So every now and then something will kind of come through, but we haven't. I've been here 4.5 years now. We haven't had anything since I've been here.
I'm knocking on wood.
Right, exactly. Knock on the wood on that. We had the one come through that kind of ended up being a big dud, which was always nice. But yeah, so Steve, I don't have an answer to you, brother. It's just one of those things. I don't know. We get I guess if you're looking for an excuse, any excuse will do, right? So
All right,
is
so
what it is.
we're gonna pivot. Ken,
All right.
are you ready?
Fire away, whatever you got next.
We're going to
whatever
start
that
with
is.
this
20
question.
questions.
That
Here we go.
I know you and I have discussed a few topics and all, so we're gonna. I'm gonna suggest this. I'm gonna.
Again, I have no idea what's coming.
Yeah, he says
Okay.
discuss, but
All
he,
right.
he chat, AI, and then came up
Right,
with a
right.
bunch,
Oh,
and
by
then
the
it's
way,
like-
I've got a list
yeah.
of 20 AI
Yeah.
questions that I'd like to now hit you up with
I need to
in
check.
30 seconds or less.
And then he dissed me because he's like, "Oh, you were a paper pusher in the Air Force."
Oh no, you did not.
Hey, this
Hey,
is full
he
and
said
open. This
that.
is unfiltered right here.
Yes.
Part of America's greatest and best right here.
Yeah, I
Paper
mean,
pusher
okay,
from
he
way
wants to
on
go
back.
there. I was thinking he's gonna have these cool. He had these
war
missions,
stories or whatever.
like night vision. He's wearing, and no, I
Sniping people
yeah,
from
I'm
2 miles
thinking,
away.
I'm thinking maybe he's flying a fighter jet or something because he's Air Force. No,
Night
geez.
vision for me was trying to find my glasses, put them on so I can go to the bathroom or something. Yeah.
But you know what? You guys are still just as important as the ones that are
thank you. I'm
flying
loving
the,
you.
Oh
the fighter
yeah,
jets.
yeah. What do you want from him? Here we go.
All right,
the logistical
so-
trail.
No, I will say, and all the other military people will back me up or fuss at me. I've always been told that the Marines come in and dig the ditches, the Army comes in and builds the barracks, and the Air Force comes in and builds the golf course.
Absolutely.
Is that fair?
Yeah. So there's a good. I don't remember where this came out. It was on the internet. I mean, you probably weren't even born at this time, Tim. But we were in Kosovo at the time. I wasn't in Kosovo. The United States was in Kosovo.
Yeah. It was what mid '90s, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was mid '90s. I was actually in the black world of the F-16 program office at the time, and there was a picture that came out, and it showed the Marines and the Air Force were sharing a base, post camp, whatever they would called it. So our side would have been a base, their side would have been a camp.
Sure.
Literally the same space, right, butted up against each other. Shows their picture of all their tents in the mud, and the Air Force guys had taken all of the, plywood and stuff that had come in when they bring in all the rations and stuff, and built sidewalks and stuff so they could like walk out of the rain and out of the mud and into their tent and not muddy up their tent. And of course, the Marines were making fun of the Air Force. It's like, so we're in the same location, sharing a mission here. Sorry that you guys didn't think to take the wood.
No, I thought you were about to tell me that like the Air Force guys got like hazard duty pay or something for the same circumstances.
All right, guys.
You got something for us?
Yeah, hold on. This will be.
Oh, he's got something on paper pushing, I'm sure.
I think we got a comparison of the branches. Now, I will say here at Smithville Baptist, we are really close to a huge amount of military bases. We got all kinds here. We got one of the biggest naval Air Force bases in the world here. We've got Oceana.
From a military metroplex, we're probably the largest metroplex, I would say, in the world.
Probably in the world, yeah.
I mean, DC's got a lot of people, but I mean, it's not like all of the different, bases and umpteen carriers, that kind of thing.
Well, in the actual, shall I say, hardware of the military, as it were, right? Yeah.
All right, Ken, I want you to read this, okay? If you can see it.
All right. Coming up here.
All right.
Navy.
Sometimes at sea, we won't be in contact with anyone.
Army.
Sometimes you experience a lack of communication out in the field.
Marines.
Sometimes in battle, your communication equipment may break.
Air Force.
You should have a pretty good Wi-Fi signal in your room. If not, just call the hotel front desk. Yes, thank you.
And the Air Force guy's like, I don't understand what's funny here. I don't get it. That's funny. Yeah, my dad was one of these guys who started off in the Army. And then when we moved up as a family up to Richmond, there wasn't really a good reserve unit for him because Dad was when reserves to begin with. So he actually was one of those guys who switched from Army to Navy kind of mid-career, and he spent 28 years as a reservist and went active duty, I think 3 times. Did that kind of branch swap there as well.
When I retired, I made a comment that, all my life I thought I had a plan. And it was clear that God had a different plan.
Yeah.
And, because my dad was a Russian linguist in the Navy. And so both of my brothers went in the Navy, but I actually wanted to go Army first, then Navy. And the reason was that I thought at some point I might go into politics. And so I had done some history. And, if you look at military figures that became politicians,
they were all in the Army, weren't they?
And
Eisenhower?
Absolutely. In the Navy and Air Force, new service, whatever. So, so I actually had an Army scholarship. But it was before my physical, and I was first alternate for a Navy scholarship. And I was poor growing up, so without a scholarship, I wasn't going to school. And the Marines were trying to get me to, hey, come on, enlist, and then you can go, spend some 4 years with us, and we'll send you to get your degree.
GI Bill stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I got my physical, and my eyes disqualified me from the Army. And so,
how bad do your eyes have to be for you not to be in the Army?
They were bad.
Really?
And so, when they shine the big E on the wall, I think there's a light on the wall.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you wear contacts?
I do.
Okay.
So
my eyes are bad, but they're not that bad.
Now readers too. And so they sent me the report, from MEPS or whatever it was, and whatever the medical thing is.
Sure.
I don't even recall. It's too long ago. And it had disqualified me from everything, including the Merchant Marine Academy.
Get out.
And so the only thing I was still eligible for was the Air Force Academy and the Air Force, Air Force ROTC.
Wow.
But I found out so late because I was expecting to go Army that I couldn't get a 4-year scholarship. The Air Force Academy sends me a brochure to actually fill out to potentially get on as a swimmer, and I had just learned how. For anyone that knows, I learned how to swim really late. I was afraid of the water, and I didn't know. I looked at this brochure, and I'm like, man, these dudes are studs. There's no way I'm going to look like, I can't compete against them. I didn't know after a year I would look just like that.
Right.
So I ended up going to VMI on a hope and a prayer that I'd eventually get a scholarship to be able to stay. And so that was kind of like career plan change one, right there. So yeah.
Well, so let's talk about career changes, and let's talk about life changes that we don't expect, and our plans, and then God's got His plans for us, because your career has been kind of a varied one. You've shared some of that. So give us some other examples of like where you thought you had it all planned out, and God said, no, this is how we're going to do this.
Yeah. So I was a civil engineer. I was a distinguished graduate from VMI, and out of the 97 civil engineers in my class, when we graduated, I was number 7. And but I was dating a gal that I met at ROTC, and I wanted to be near her assignment. And so I asked, hey, can I get any assignment that's close to her base? And she was going to, George Air Force Base out in California. So they got me assigned to the Ballistic Missile Organization. So here I'm a civil engineer, working BMO. So my very first job was blowing up, missile silos to nuclear effects. So that was pretty cool. Now I didn't really do that. A bunch of contractors did, but that started me on a path where, here I thought I was going to be like the civil engineer building bridges and dams and all this other stuff, things I would study for, and that I was like prepared mentally wanted to go do. And, next thing you know, I'm, managing contracts.
Yeah. Hence Tim's paper.
Conversation. So I think I was good at it though, Tim.
You pushed it better than the others.
Yeah, I pushed it better than the others. So,
all right.
And then through those lifetimes changes, we awarded a contract, and Sharon's company had won that contract, and they were trying to come out for a kickoff meeting, and she was a secretary/security officer for their company, and couldn't get into our facility because our security guys weren't doing their jobs, and so they're like. And I still remember the guy's name, Ed Susie, was like, call Ken, he'll take care of this for you. And so sure enough, I went and, got it all done. And he comes out to the meeting and he says, Ken, I just want you to know that people like having the meetings in Albuquerque, which is where Sharon was at, right? Because, she's a good looking gal. Mm-hmm. And I said, I can just, I said, Ed, I can just see this in the papers right now. Lieutenant holds meeting in Albuquerque to check out chick.
Well, I would imagine there's been worse reasons.
yeah, absolutely. But that whole story can go on forever on how we met. But sure enough, eventually, we hooked up, and I drove out to Albuquerque, and within 4 months, we were engaged.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and
awesome.
Here we've been married all this time. So
how many years?
Happy Mother's Day.
Yeah, happy Mother's Day.
88. So that's a long time.
A lot of time to put
if you ask me to do the math in public while I'm in front of everybody.
No.
I'll probably have to buy her more flowers, and I didn't even buy her flowers today. Just admitting.
All right, so I don't know. I'm no good at math, so it's when did you get married? What's your date?
October. So we're going on.
So you're on. So we're
35,
still,
right?
So you're still 19.
Yeah,
1988
years.
34 because you're coming up on 35. You're right. Yeah, Jen and I have 20 this year. Yeah. Now, Tim, you and Mallory are a few years after Jen and I. So how long you been married?
Oh, since 2011. So
11. Oh, so you're a newbie at this.
Yeah, we're a little newbie.
Yep. So all right. So you met Sharon, and then you were out.
And just as an interesting note on that, right? I mean, it's really interesting that our church looks like the rest of the world too much, doesn't it? I mean, when you look at divorce rates and whatnot, and it's almost like we're missing some of those things because clearly all three of us have broken a mode, our model that was going on, right? You make the first year, you're good, and then 3-year point, then the 5-year point,
7-year itch,
and then you got kids, and
right.
So for all you out there, hang in there. It's a wonderful experience together.
Yeah, but it certainly takes a lot of communication.
Oh, absolutely.
It takes a lot of patience. Takes a lot of forgiveness. Marriage is work, right?
Yeah.
And it's great work and it's awesome work, but it's not easily done. Right?
Yeah, and you got to find a woman that'll put up with me. So I mean,
yeah, there you go. Yeah, or Tim for that matter. But yeah, I mean, like I said, coming up on 20 years, and it's been a great ride, and so it's hard work.
So go into the because I know you have a really good story why you couldn't, or why not couldn't, but didn't make a certain rank because of something.
Yeah,
and I know you.
Yeah, talk about God at work here as well. Yeah, right.
Yeah, so I want you to talk about that story because you told it to me, and it was very interesting. I think a lot of people will take something from it. So
yeah, I mean it's a fairly lengthy story, so I'm going to cut it down to I'm going to cut it down to a couple minutes and see where it goes from there. But so I worked in what we call the black world. So the black world is the things that we don't tell the rest of the world. And
we're not going to tell them here either, right?
Yeah, and we're not going to tell them here. Otherwise, you'd have to kill me.
You're right. There goes the end of our podcast.
Yeah. Anyway, but my first general who decided to make me move me from civil engineering to acquisition, I followed him into the B2 program, and then
which is
the B2 is the big bomber that you see out of Whiteman.
Right.
Okay. So I followed him into that program, and I stayed there for 5 years where I was getting my master's at the Air Force Institute of Technology. Believe me, very painful to get a master's that demands almost as much as an undergraduate degree.
While you're working.
While you're working.
right,
And then
right.
on top of that, I was literally TDY half of every course.
What's that? TV.
So on travel.
Got it.
So temporary duty.
Got it.
So I was on travel going out to California. If the course was 10 weeks long, I was gone on 5 weeks of it.
Sure. Doing
And,
the job, right?
and then at the time, Tim, I mean, I know that you have internet and all these other things, but, we literally, when I was doing my master's and I was at home, I would go hit a web page and it would take so long for the modem to do it. And, and again, I mean, I'm working, I usually open up the program office. I usually close the program office. I was doing sports and then I have to do my master's, right? And Sharon would be in the other room and she'd see me and I'd be doing one of these. Because I'd fallen asleep waiting for the page
everything to come on.
to come on.
Yeah,
so
they give you like half the screen as it comes down.
Oh yeah, it was crazy. So anyway, so after I left the B2, I went into the black world of the F-16, which is really kind of cool because they're actually teaching my daughter some of the technologies that I was working on back in the 90s.
That's cool.
But it was very cool. So I made major at that point in time, but I hadn't pinned on yet. So I could literally take any job that I wanted to, and then go back into the black world. And at that time, promotions were, essentially 100%. So as long as you were worthy to get promoted, you'd get promoted.
Yeah.
So one job that really intrigued me was to go be a test engineer in the back of Blackhawks out at Nellis.
Okay.
And they were like, well, you won't get promoted here because, we're a pilot base, so it's always about pilots getting promoted. And I'm like, I don't care. I already have a line. They're like, well, that'd be good. Well, on a whim, I looked, and sure enough, VMI needed a ROTC instructor. So I called the commander, and I went home after I called the commander, and I told Sharon, I said, I want to take this job because I've always wanted to work for a professed Christian boss.
Okay.
And so this would be a great experience. We'll get to go back to VMI. And so we went there.
And that's the commander you're talking about?
Yeah, it was the commander of ROTC. So for those that don't know, VMI is just like any other school, except that we're a military school, but it would be just like going to UVA. And so ROTC is a detachment, a federal detachment at the school. So just like UVA would have.
Because we're in that, Storm had a quick question, and if you could just let her know, what does VMI stand for?
Virginia Military Institute.
There you go.
So thanks. And
Up in Lexington.
Virginia.
Virginia.
Mm-hmm. So I went there to go to VMI, and after 6 months, I looked the commander in the eye and said, "Sir, I'm filing an Inspector General complaint, and here's the 4 reasons."
Oh, I bet that went over well.
Yeah, and then I got 2 letters of reprimand from that. So, so if you really want to know what happens to your career when you are feeling attacked, especially by somebody, and they're like, I'm not going to say anything about his Christianity or not Christianity.
Yeah, right. Sure.
But the day that the Inspector General came in was the day that I got my second letter of reprimand. And I go to talk to the Inspector General, and my commander is literally like leaning up against the side of the door, just like this, just chatting with the guy. And I'm standing there, waiting for him to be done. He looks back and goes, well, because by this time I had pinned on Major. He goes, well, Major Hurlinger's here, and I think he has something to share with you. So I go in and I said, sir, I just got a second letter of reprimand. And this guy was the commander of the ROTC detachment in West Virginia. It took him like 2 weeks to get to me, even though he's right across the way. So that tells you there's a lot of other preparatory things that they were doing, unfortunately.
Sure.
And he says to me, this is really hard. I have 2 Christians fighting this out. Therefore, professing in my mind that he also was a Christian. Right? And I looked at him, I said, sir, this has nothing to do about our Christianity. This is about holding people accountable on earth for man's laws, not God's laws.
Okay.
So anyway, so they ended up doing what we call a non-voluntary assignment. They pushed me to Gunter Air Force Base down in Maxwell. And
outside Montgomery?
Yeah, Maxwell, Montgomery.
Yep.
And I believe they did that because it literally was intended to ruin my career. So, the commander was a personnel officer, the head of the RTC was a personnel officer. Here I am, I've got a guy with, clearances. I would have gone back into the black world. If I would have gone into the black world, then again, you remember the whole promotion discussion at the time, it was very high because we only wanted the best in those circumstances, right?
Right.
And so they sent me down there, and as soon as I got those orders, I decided to launch to the Chief of Staff of the Air Force. So I ended up becoming known by 3 chief of staff, so that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
That chief that was there that took my thing, was my IG complaint, held me in place, and then he was forced to retire, or he actually resigned because of some other incidents that were going on in the world at the time. And he was not going to hold this 1-star accountable for the blowing up of the towers that happened in Cold War Towers. And so he resigned. The next 4-star comes in, the chief and his commander's action group says, hey, you got to take the assignment. So I went down to Montgomery. I mean, I was forced to take it, and they said, let the IG complaint, run its route. And then when I went down to Montgomery, the leadership there apparently liked me, because next thing you know, here's this civil engineer turned acquisition guy, and I'm running the top-level network ops center for the Air Force.
Nice.
So that's how I became known in the.
So when were you in Montgomery? What was that time frame?
So that was 97.
97. Okay.
97 to 2000, and that's where Ann was born. Was in
Yeah. Okay.
Montgomery, yeah.
Well, I was born in Montgomery.
Oh, how about that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Shared
I was born in
heritage.
Montgomery. Sure
Yeah.
was. Right there in now I can't remember the name. Johnson Hospital.
Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah. So anyway, so if you want to know how your faith gets tested, it gets tested when you're under the crucible.
Yeah, and unfortunately, and I knew this was a work environment, so it was really work-related stuff that was the friction. But it is amazing to me how Christians can just really behave badly.
Oh yeah.
We really can, and sometimes we are our own worst enemy in not treating our brothers and sisters in the faith with respect and with the right way to do things. And again, I know you were saying this was really truly work related, not faith related. But at the same time, it is a shame when we feel like we've got 2 Christians that are pitted against each other and just can't seem to get on the same page.
And the sad thing is, it tends to be because people feel threatened. Like I mean, if you think I'm motivated now, think of me back, when I was 35.
Sure.
Right?
Had a whole career
still,
in front of you as
still
well. Right?
working out,
Yeah.
once or twice a day.
Sure.
So physically active, don't sleep much, willing to take on about everything. And,
Yeah.
literally, I mean, I would, be there at 5:30 in the morning when they were doing company time. I'd go to morning swim practice with the swim team to help the coach there, work all day, help the ultimate Frisbee team in the evening, come back, work until, I just got too tired, and then went home and had my wife put me back together so I could act like I was still 18 or something.
Sure. Right,
And so, everybody else wasn't willing to be that committed. And so you become a threat because you stand out.
Yeah. That's
Right.
right.
All right, so I got to ask this, and I'll. So you were committed,
I'm always committed.
but
Sometimes.
Whatever you do, you're committed, right?
did that much commitment? Did it bother your wife at all? Did that seem to?
Yeah, that's a good question on Mother's Day.
I know. Did it seem to bother her at all?
I wish she was sitting here because.
We can make that happen.
Yeah, we could. We could probably call her on in and say, hey, maybe you should answer this.
You should answer this question.
Yeah, when she met me, I mean, like the first time we actually got to see each other physically, I had driven nonstop from, California, which is just, where I was, it was in San Bernardino, to Albuquerque.
That's not close.
No, it's quite the drive.
It's quite a drive.
Just so I could spend a Thanksgiving with her, and I'd never even met her until that time. So, well, actually, no, I can't say that. Excuse me. Time out, back up. We did go on one date. That's a whole nother story about how we met, because I almost dumped her.
Oh, okay.
Oh, so you almost dumped her? Is that
Yeah, I
what you're
almost
trying
dumped
to
her.
tell us?
Yeah,
Okay.
like you're gonna come date me. Well, all right.
Let it be noted.
Yeah, I gotta tell this story. I'll tell the story. We'll get back to it.
Please, you gotta tell us now.
So I did have a meeting out in Albuquerque. I was the head of the company grade officer council. I had never gone to a company grade officer council meeting in my life, but I had been sitting on, filling in for an exec and seeing people writing an executive officer and seeing people writing things in people's OPRs, which are performance reports, or in their awards that weren't true. Right? They were taking credit for things, and I'm like, okay, I'm reading the minutes from this session over here, and you weren't even in that meeting or whatever. And so I'd kick them back, right?
Okay.
And
Making friends everywhere you went.
Oh yeah,
Right?
yeah.
That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, we're promoting people for things that they didn't
They weren't
do.
even there.
And I talked to Colonel Gagosha, and we called him Gogo, Colonel Gogo, and I said, "Sir, I'm kicking all these back because they're not right." And so I was so intrigued by why senior officers could write stuff that they thought was correct, because they hear about things, and so they presume that their people are engaged in it, but they really weren't. That I decided to run for the president of the Company Grade Officer Council, which is an advisory kind of council to the commander, and nobody ran against me. They called me the preacher.
Called you the preacher.
And because I was on fire. I was like, I'm gonna fix this. I'm gonna fix this, right? And
bring some hellfire.
Yeah, so I'd
damnation
never even gone to one meeting. I don't believe if I recollect, I'd never gone to a meeting. Next thing you know, I'm the president of the council, and they had all of the company grade officer councils throughout the command going to Albuquerque for a meeting, and that's when I had picked up the phone and said to Sharon, "Hey, I'm gonna be out for a meeting. Do you want to go on a date?"
Yeah.
And she goes, "Yeah, I'll come pick you up in a yellow car." And I said, "Okay." And she's having to pick me up on base because I didn't have a rental car and all that other stuff. Well, we decided on a mutual place to meet, which is the Officers Club. And I'm waiting, I'm checking okay, what is this? And I'm waiting, I go in the club. I don't even know what she looks like, really.
Sure.
I mean, I had a basic description that she was,
it's
blonde.
Pre-internet. And,
yeah,
and
exactly. I mean, everyone else
yeah.
is like, oh, well, we didn't
Right,
have any of that.
none of that.
So I'm like walking all around. I'm thinking if she's inside the club, even though we said we were going to meet outside the club, she would clearly be able to see me, this guy walking around going,
Lost.
Yeah, lost,
Sure.
right? So finally, I'm like, I'm giving her 5 more minutes, and then I'm going to call her, and that's it.
That's it. I'm done.
Right? Next thing I know, this yellow Corvette comes up, and it's Sharon.
Good timing.
Yeah, it was really good timing.
And what did we decide? 34 years later,
Yeah,
here
yeah.
you still are. Does she still have her yellow Corvette?
We still, it's a hanger queen right now. We call
Yeah?
it hanger queen. So I got to get someone
Nice.
to fix it. But yeah, it's there.
That's good stuff
Yeah.
right there.
So anyway, then I'd come out in November, and you were asking about commitment, and did the drive, so I could spend a longer period of time. And back in those days, they had just deregulated airlines, and so you would fly, they would overbook the airplane, and so you'd go, okay, well, they're looking for someone to get a free ticket, so we'd pay for a ticket, and we might get 2 or 3 spinoffs off of that ticket.
Sure. You're willing to wait.
So we were, she would often come out to see me on the weekends, and it really was the romantic deal. I mean,
That's
if you think about all the time you spend together, and now here we are, and so, but I'm not sure she was totally prepared because it wasn't like we could just see each other every day. I mean, you only saw each other on a weekend, and sometimes you'd have to go multiple weekends, and literally engaged her in the parking lot of the Ontario airport.
Nice.
So
Well, when
I'm a class
right?
act. Yeah, I'm a class
that's
act
right.
all
Nothing
around.
but the best. Nothing but the best. I can't say a whole lot. Jen and I were engaged really quickly too. So
And she, she knew when she met me. I mean, I was just like this really motivated guy. I mean, I had a reputation with her company already for being knowledgeable and very active, very proactive about everything I did, and still wanted to compete in sports. I mean, so I was involved with intramurals, and I think she kind of liked it. But there were times, I mean, I wouldn't get home until 1 or 2 in the morning, and I'd be back at work at 6.
Yeah. That's tough.
Yeah, it is tough.
Okay, so I'm gonna say this: Do you feel like, because of how busy you were, did you feel like you ever missed out on anything with your daughter?
No, because I mean, for once we had Anne, pretty much she became center to almost
Gotcha.
everything
Okay.
we did.
Yeah, that's
I mean, I think we never had. I mean, this is interesting. We never had a babysitter. When she went to James River, we had her before James River folded over here.
Right. It was a private school. In the
Private
local
school.
Area. Yeah.
I became the head of the PTA because I was like the only one that ever came to the PTA. So I guess
Might as well
means
be the head now.
Yeah, I guess-
Win by default.
Yeah, I guess it made the PTA Sharon and I don't know.
Well, that's cool. That's a good question, though, Tim.
Yeah, and we would just bring Ann with us, and she would just see all the dialogue. Like when we had a formal dinner up on the air staff when I was up there, and they had formed a band. We called it the SCDC after ACDC.
Nice.
Yeah, so SC was the designation of our unit, and she was the only child that came.
Okay.
I mean, she was like, I don't know, she might have been at that time 2 years.
Yeah.
old.
How old is she now?
So she's 23.
23?
22, excuse me.
Okay.
Yeah, she was born in January 2000. So yeah,
Makes me feel so old.
yeah, you are old.
Man.
I'm so
Dude.
old thinking
Yeah.
that.
No, so we were back in my undergrad the other day. We're walking around because I had a couple college professors who were so dear to me and retired. We're walking along, and Jen says, most of these kids are looking at you like some kind of grandpa walking around here. I'm like,
Yeah.
Thanks, babe. I appreciate that,
Yeah.
really.
So I'm gonna go a different direction here because I know you do a lot of mentoring with the young generation and all. So what? I've lost it. Oh yeah. What advice?
Another
would
AI
you,
question.
No,
You ready? Here we
you
go.
chill with that.
How would you describe the metaphor of?
We'll put a chip in the brain, and that'll take care of all of us.
What advice would you give young Christians considering a career in the military?
Yeah.
'Cause like I said, I know you mentor a lot of young kids. So
Yeah, it's interesting. You have to be yourself, and I'm not saying that you have to be a Bible thumping person, because I'm not that.
Sure.
I'm not the
Right.
guy that's going to stand on the town hall and cry. That's
Right.
not
Yeah.
that's not what I think God has made me to be. But I do think that for all my faults, when people look at me in the work environment, they know they're seeing a Christian.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
just a funny story. If I'm talking with you and I'm yelling and screaming at you, if I don't cuss, I'm not mad. If I'm talking to you like this and I cuss, then something in me is, and it's something
Churned up, right?
that happened at VMI.
Yep.
Because you can imagine back in
Yeah.
those days,
It-
all male
it was
environment,
a
military
little
school,
spicy.
language was much different.
Yeah.
And so I tend to control it, but you can definitely, and my cuss words are like very minor.
Sure.
But I'm just saying, if I was ever to say like even hell in a discussion, that I would be
Pretty
mad,
worked
right?
up.
Unless I'm talking about the Bible.
Right. The literal place.
yeah,
right.
yeah, the literal place. And so anyway, that says something, I think, when people look at you. Like, I've had people swear in my presence and then immediately apologize.
Yeah. Because they
Right.
just know that's not how
'Cause
you
they just
operate
not-
what you
no,
do. Yeah.
right. That's not what I want to see
That's
out
a
of
good point.
behaviors and characters. And
point.
but I don't hide the fact that I'm a Christian. I mean, I think people know it when I'm mentoring people and we're talking about some of the topics. Clearly they're coming from a Christian background. Even if I'm not saying, hey, let's go talk about Corinthians, and like I'm mentoring a supply chain guy in my company right now, and I wouldn't go down that path unless he wanted to go down that path. So I still am trying to be respectful of what we have to do in the workplace environment.
Sure.
But it's pretty clear that my moral side is associated with Christian values.
Living it out in front of them, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that really is the key. Now, I mean, dig into Tim's question a little bit more. I mean, because I read things where it's like, well, the military's become less tolerant, shall we say, of Christianity, or shall we say more tolerant of other faiths, so diminishing Christianity. So someone who is considering the military and is Christian or has a Christian relationship with Jesus, I mean, is that a place where you can still thrive? I mean, as long as you get the job done, because you hear stories of some, I wouldn't call it discrimination, but you know what I'm trying to say, brother. Some hostility, perhaps, in certain areas. What would you say to that person?
Yeah, I mean, this is a tough topic, considering that the Navy just hired a transgender to help try and market. I mean, what and who are we marketing to? Right. So, where's the moral value of that? Again, the person can make their own choice. I get all that, right? But to be promoting a culture and a value over the standard kind of culture that says we should all be harmoniously working together as a unit, and frankly, I really don't care about your race, color, creed, sex, any of that stuff.
Sure.
If the goal is to throw a grenade 30 yards or whatever, I don't even know what the standard is for the
but
Army,
that's
but
if
that's the standard, throw the grenade, and
Right,
hey,
right.
you're in the club,
Right,
right?
right,
I mean,
sure,
but
sure.
don't throw the grenade 3 feet, because then all of us just got killed, right? So, so meet the standard. But why do we have to promote that? Why instead are we not just promoting the standard values? I mean, like your joke that you had earlier, right, about the communication, right? Why are we not standardizing on those things, right, about the unit and the camaraderie and the nation? I don't believe in a hyphenated country. I mean, I don't consider myself to be a German American. I just consider myself to be an American, right? I mean, so as we're talking about those things and you're trying to bring people into our military, we're actually creating division. We talk about diversity, but we're creating a false sense of diversity, right? That's actually antagonizing all sides. Instead of just saying, no, we're all here together. The mission is this. We want you to be part of that mission.
Right.
And again, does it have to be a Christian value thing?
Well, and
Yeah, it'd be nice, but the bottom line is, let's set it off on values first.
Sure.
Those values are the values of the military culture, not, and frankly, would I rather have them as the Judeo-Christian? Absolutely.
Sure.
Right.
But does the culture from the outside, does the culture, in your personal opinion, does the culture of the military and what, we need the military to be, is that culture being weakened by the, shall we say, the unintentional creation of division? I mean, I would think that it'd have to be, right?
Yeah, I mean, as soon as I say yes, then everyone's going to go, he's a bigot, right? I mean, that's just...
But that's not really... But let's just talk about, all right, the military is there to protect us. I mean, I want my fighter pilot to be able to
best,
send that
right?
bomb where
Right.
that bomb is supposed to go.
Right.
I want the guy who's protecting my kids to be able to throw that grenade where it's supposed to be thrown,
Yeah,
right? I mean, that's it's kind of like when I was reading, I don't know, about a year ago maybe or so, where they were going to lower the standards for airline pilots so they could have more diversity.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's like, I can't, that's like the worst place. I can't even imagine, like, you know.
Can I make a joke with you here?
Well, as long as everybody online can hear it.
Yeah. So so as an example, I don't want him to lessen the weight, or not the weight, the height standard
Right.
to allow you to be a pilot.
Sure.
Right?
Fair enough.
I mean, if I have to redesign a
Yeah.
$100 million
pilot. That's right.
plane to
That's
be able
right.
to fit someone that
Sure.
is like 5'1",
Right, whatever. Yeah, right, sure. Right, throw
Right?
whatever it is, right?
Right, because
or
because at some
eyesight or
point
whatever it is.
right, 'cause
Yeah.
at some point in time, there's always going to be that strata where you'll never be able to accommodate someone to be in the same thing that somebody else is.
Right. I mean, I'm colorblind.
Right.
So are you, you know, I can't fly a plane. Well, that seems like you're not being diverse enough. I should be able to fly that plane,
Right.
even though I can't see the red and the green on the lights coming in.
Yeah,
Like, what do you
like the threat
yeah,
indicator that says you're about ready to
that's
be
right.
shot
Who-
down because
who
a
are-
missile's coming at you.
Who are you to tell me that I can't be flying a plane even though
Yeah.
I can't see red or green? I mean, come on, give me a break, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I just, from the outside, I want the military to be the best it can be. And
Right.
anything that gets in the way of that, that's a problem, right?
Yeah, you know, and it's interesting because you know, my wife's my equal. I mean, she's an equal partner to what we do, right?
Sure.
But from a teaching perspective, am I not supposed to also be an equal partner in the teaching aspect in my family, if not maybe the leader in my family?
Sure.
And what's wrong in our society is that we don't have enough men leading in their families anymore.
Yeah, and that's a whole nother. Yeah,
It's a
can
whole
of
nother,
worms.
whole
You're
nother topic,
You're
right? But
you're right.
but that it does bleed over into what's happening in the military, because we have people that literally have not been taught the importance of our country and our culture and how we've been getting better and better and better every. We're not perfect. Nobody ever is imperfect.
And no
is
country's
perfect.
ever
No
perfect.
country's
That's right.
ever
That's right.
perfect.
Ever.
But you know, there was this idea that the United States is the shining hill, right? The shining city on the hill, right? And people, I mean, clearly, look what's going on the border right now. People want to come to the United States,
they
right?
they want the blessings of the country.
So-
yeah, absolutely.
So, but we need a military that's going to protect us, and you know, we want people to be able to meet that standard. And again, does it matter your background? I don't think it does, as long as you're committed to raising your right hand and swearing to protect the Constitution, just like, and to take the orders of the people above you, just like I did.
Absolutely.
And if you're not, then just don't join.
That's right.
But don't tell me that I'm going to all of a sudden what.
I'm going to join, but I want you to change
I'm
it
going
for
to join,
me.
but I don't want to follow the
that's
orders
right,
of the
that's right,
officers
that's
above
right.
me, because that's not my culture, because I come from a rebellious nature and I didn't trust my teachers and I didn't trust my parents, but I'm still a human being, so I want to come in, but I'm going to do my own thing.
Right. And you're going to honor it.
Yeah. I mean, so it's a very tough thing, but I would say for anyone that's out there that wants to be in the military, I mean, you have to be who you are, right? And I think the importance of what we're doing at Smithfield Baptist, many other churches, of course, is that we have good leaders, I think, working with our kids, instilling values.
We do.
For whatever walk of life that they want to
Right,
go,
right,
right?
yeah,
Any of them, because no matter where they go, culture's waiting for them.
Sure. And they're going to have to, going back to Miss Carroll's bumper sticker, they're going to have to be able to think.
Right.
They have to be able to process. All right. So we should probably be wrapping this up here in the next couple minutes.
But I always want to I always give the
tie a
guest.
bow on this. Yep.
Always give the guest.
All right.
You got last. Is there anything?
words.
Last word. This is.
Last word? Do I get to
Yeah.
ask a question, or do I have to give a last word?
You can
do
give
whatever
a
you
question.
want.
You got whatever you want to give. You got last word.
Okay. Pastor, just humor me on some vision things here.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm 59, coming on 60.
All right.
Still hanging in there, working with the kids.
Right. Yeah.
Want to be doing it forever.
Right. We hope so.
So I've made a promise to my swim mom for the Nansman Swim Club. I'll put a plug there. That she said she'll keep helping out, running the team with me as long as I coach. And I'm like, well, your youngest is 6, so that's 12 years. I'll be 72. I think I can handle it.
Absolutely.
All right. So tell me what you see the church looking like. Our church right here,
our
Smithfield
church, Smithfield
Baptist,
Baptist. Ooh.
when I am 72 years old.
When you were 72 years old. All right. 12 years from now?
12 years from now.
Well, that's a good question. This is the first time in my ministry that I have ever been in a place that was growing. Socioeconomically was solid, and the area was growing. I've been predominantly in either rural or areas where there were some socioeconomic struggles around the church. So it's been very interesting to me to watch, this area. So there's about 40,000 people in what we call Isle of Wight County, where Smithfield, Virginia is. And if I did my math right, and that is never a given, we should be getting up around 140,000 in about 10 years from now. So my vision for the church is that we continue to be a place where people feel loved from a variety of backgrounds, a variety of races, and and all of those pieces. And quite honestly, the military brings a lot of that to us,
Right.
because it's so
Because
varied.
we've always been diverse,
Right,
right?
absolutely.
We've always been the culture that we accept,
That's right.
accept people. Yeah.
Because the standard, right?
Right.
Didn't matter. So we have the opportunity to be more diverse than a lot of churches in other areas. We have an opportunity to do the right things so that God will use us in this area. So if we've got 100,000 people, let's say, moving into the area, I mean, it's incumbent upon us to be aware and open to God's vision for what He wants us to do, so that we are a place that He will use in that growth. So my vision 12 years from now is that, we have consistently become more and more, just like as individuals, we're trying to become more and more like the people God's created us to be. It's not an out, but it's an honest answer, is that I hope 12 years from now we have consistently shown that we have taken concrete steps through staffing and programming and focus and vision and building and campus and all those things, that we have intentionally over those 12 years taken deliberate concrete steps to become more the church that God has called us to be. Because I believe if we are really truly committed to being the church He's called us to be, and whatever that looks like, because we don't know just yet,
Right.
we're going to live into that and see that He will bless us, because it will be a place that He can use to build His kingdom. And so we're not going to build Smithfield Baptist Church's kingdom. You've heard me say that. We're going to build God's kingdom. So 12 years from now, I mean, I think we do have a very strong opportunity to grow in numbers, but even more so because you can have a lot of numbers and not be healthy.
Right.
Even more so that I think we can guarantee the healthy aspect of that, which then leads to good numbers if we put God's vision for this local expression first. Programmatic-wise, don't know.
Yeah.
Who
Do
knows?
you think we'll be successful, though, given, out of that 140,000, as our culture continues to, literally eat itself, it seems
Sure.
like, where more and more people are in church. So, yeah, the numbers are going to grow, but the people that are coming here,
May or may not be
may
Christian.
or may not
right?
be
Yeah,
Christians, and
absolutely.
may or not, even be trying to find a church. So, yeah,
right.
they're sitting right here in our community, but they look at the steeple and go, it's just a steeple.
I believe that's our responsibility. We got to get outside our walls.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. And I've been shocked even in the past 4 years at how many times it's hit me in the face that people have no idea what we do underneath that steeple.
Yeah.
They, like in our culture, they have no idea anymore.
Yeah, I think like what we're doing with Awanas, is really, I mean,
That's our Wednesday night program. by
it's
the way.
really
Yeah.
been amazing. And then like I see our church youth group, it's starting to grow. Like when we first came to this area, we visited here, but then ended up going to Nansemond River and then coming back, like I said, in 2010.
Right.
So that growth is starting to get back to what I remember seeing my first time when I came into the church back then. But I also know that you have a heart for special ministries too.
Yeah,
so
sure,
so
sure.
isn't that part of that growth path?
Yeah,
there,
I
too?
mean, and again, growth is, I think we fall into a trap in the church, and I know you agree. I think we fall into a trap when we make our health based upon what our numbers are in the pews, and I know you agree with that.
Right.
I mean, we need to make sure that health is being the church that God's called us to be, whether that's to help families with special needs, if that's to be racially more diverse, if that's more programming, if that's more schooling here
Right.
offered by the school. I mean, if that's whatever that is. I mean, the goal is to be more of who God's called us to be. So, you could say, well, you got people moving in, so we could just kind of naturally grow. But I think, to your point, there's no guarantee that the majority of those people are going to be looking for steeples. So, to Tim's point, I think that we have to recognize that in our changing culture, we have to do a better job as the church to let people know what is so wonderful about a relationship with Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the health piece of it. I mean, they don't want to hear my moralizing. They want to know, why is it that Jesus will make a difference in my life? And if we as a church can do that and make that argument in a persuasive way, then I think that we can make an impact. So it says we have several families that are driving over the James River Bridge to attend our church. That says something about what we're doing that's right. Yeah, and I think that speaks to culture.
Right.
I think that speaks to culture. And so the healthy culture will draw people who are seeking a healthy place.
Yeah,
So,
and I think, if I look at people that are my age and, I'd say 5 years plus or minus, and you see us all still motivated and, engaged, teaching and
Right.
doing things. When that 12 years comes by and it's 72, I mean, I still want to be doing those things because I want every generation knowing, this is how we're interconnected. And,
That's right.
and a lot of times the younger kids will say, well, the older kid or the older people
Senior
that attend the
adults.
church,
Yeah,
senior
yeah,
adults,
yeah.
don't care about us. But I can tell you when I walk around and I'm talking to the senior adults and I'm visiting with them, they are hyped.
Yeah.
They are hyped about what they're
Really
seeing.
psyched up about it. Yeah. That's right.
We're trying to change this idea that you just sit there in the pew and I'm going to smack you with a ruler if you're
Right.
speaking.
Right. That's right.
Again, not knocking the old days of those aspects, but I think what we're starting to see is that I remember Mr. Henry when I was at Namsen River. He was an old guy, and I would be playing kickball, and he would just sit there and watch. I'm like, Mr. Henry, why don't you come over and kick the ball? He's like, I can't run. I'm like, you kick the ball, I'll get one of the kids to run for
There
you.
you go.
Right?
There you go. That's
And,
right. Just play with us, right?
I mean, people want to be engaged, and I
Yeah.
think what we're starting to see is with your guys' leadership, you and Pastor Josh, that's what we're seeing. We're seeing this dynamic now where all of the ages are there, and so don't sit on the sidelines, right?
That's right. Yeah, get involved. And and real quick, one of the things that strikes me is that, and I've shared this many times, so I'll go ahead and put it on the podcast so that people know it and just kind of know my heart on this. I mean, I grew up in Mechanicsville, Virginia, as a young adult, right outside of Richmond, and Tim's probably heard me tell this story 15 times, but here you go, brother. There were two main roads that run through that town, right? When I moved there. When I moved there was one stoplight at the high school I graduated from. And I've told people over and over again, I mean, there was two roads. There's probably 16 different types of churches on both of those roads. You could have your pick. I mean, even the Mormons from the Episcopalians, the Presbyterians, the Baptists, anybody you want to be.
Right.
And, it was amazing to me over now, let's say 25 years, 30 years even, maybe longer, gosh. Of seeing churches in the exact same town, exact same street, exact same location are being blessed by God with new buildings, new parking lots, growth, children, lots of energy, excitement. And then the church right across the street, the same town, same street, same opportunities, they're struggling to find a pastor and they're dying.
Right.
And so my heart on this is that whatever church God wants our local expression to be, whatever Smithfield Baptist is supposed to be, and whatever your church is in your particular area, in your particular expression, we need to seek to be the church that God has put us together to accomplish. Because he has a goal for all of us to accomplish in our church. And it's really his vision for what our church is supposed to be. So, for example, we really take Operation Christmas Child, OCC, really seriously here at this church. I mean, it's a big deal. We have a great team. Shout out to Susan. Yeah, absolutely. We have a great team here. But that is something that our church does. That's not something that every church does, nor is it something that every church should do, because God has other great things for them to do. But that's something that God has for us to do. So we need to do that to the best of our ability. So I think if we do that, then God will bless us because we're being true to the church he's called us to be, which I think ultimately is the key.
Yeah, great answer.
Well,
I'll be there for you in 12 years.
Yeah, man. That's right. Play kickball, right?
Well, first
I may not be. Throw a hip or something.
First, I want to thank
Ken.
thank you, Ken, for coming out here. And
he needs to sleep, not
That's
me.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
no,
right.
it
He's
is-
got
it's-
3 kids at home, dude.
But no, I want to thank you, Ken, for coming out here, and especially on Mother's Day.
Thank you, Sharon.
Coming
my pleasure.
from there. But I also want to plug our next week. We, without revealing our guests, I just want to say we're going to have a guest, and he's going to speak to his prison ministry,
Yep.
and we'll
Yep.
we will hope that you'll join us. And this time we're going to kick off promptly at 8:00.
Yep, we will be here.
and
We'll be here.
We'll be here to
We may or may
roll.
not have cookies.
But so join us promptly at 8:00 next Sunday, and we will have a guest on. Like I said, that'll be speaking to his prison ministry. And you got anything, Patrick?
No, but we should pray us out because we didn't open with prayer, so let's pray it
we
out, shall we?
didn't. Okay.
All right, let's pray,
Absolutely.
friends. All right, dear God, we thank you for this time. We thank you so much for Ken joining us tonight. We thank you for everybody who joined online, everybody who will join later during the week. We thank you for good comments, good questions, just participation that's fun and lively and enjoyable. And so we just pray that you'll bless us, bless our week. Thank you for those who have mothered us. Thank you that those who have led us and guided us and just supported us and loved on us. Bless those mothers that are out there working hard and those that you have called to love others in a special way. So thank you for them. Bless our week. May we love those you bring into our path. May we be the local expression churches you've called us to be, and may it be for your glory, the building of your kingdom alone. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
And we want to thank you viewers that are stuck around.
Yeah,
I know
still
it's
around.
late.
Yeah.
We really appreciate this,
10 till 10.
we hope to see you and you give us a little bit of your time next week.
All right. God bless. Take care now. See you later.